Please.
So we're good to go? Yes, I'd remind everybody to make sure you're signed in.
I think I signed in over there as well.
Oh, we might have to do it again then. Okay, we have to restart the sign in, folks.
Eldon told me to.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll call our meeting to order, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki in the district of Sabaganagati, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. The first order of business is the Infrastructure and Operations Committee report, and we'll go to you, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. The committee held its regular meeting on July 21st, 2026 in council chambers. The following motions are coming forward as a result of that meeting. East Hants policy for winter clearing standards for roads and sidewalks. Staff presented a report outlining a standalone service level to allow staff to utilize the current contractor availability and gain a better understanding of the potential changes posted by conducting snow clearing operations in the Uniacke Business Park. The current contract for snow clearing runs through 27-28 fiscal cycle, and this will allow for additional updates that time. As a result, updates to the policy were suggested. The Infrastructure and Operations Committee recommends the Council give notice of intent to adopt the East Hants policy for winter clearing standards for roads and sidewalks as presented to committee on July 21st, 2026. As Chair of Committee, I so move.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously.
This concludes the report.
Okay, next we have discussions scheduled on the possible transit service and potential funding models. So Graham is going to handle that. Center two. And your mic is on when you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair, good evening, councillors. So I'm back. We felt after the discussion over the last number of months with council on the topic of transit that it was important to, prior to sort of moving towards public engagement as per council's discussion and wishes, that we clarify with council a funding model that would work for taking to the public engagement. Without the funding model and providing transparent and accountable information to the public will be challenging. So we really felt that it was important to come back to council and engage in a discussion around the specifics of what potential funding model could work for the transit service that's being proposed. With the understanding that there's no necessary decision required on it, rather that we need the information in order to go through the public engagement process. We need some clarity around what the costs will be for the public and what model and who's going to, or how that model will play out in terms of the tax base. So I've put together a report for you that really summarizes both the financial side, but also at the same time, I thought it was important to provide some clarity around why we're doing transit. We've been bringing the business plans to council for a number of years now, but that first sort of feasibility and why a community does transit is sort of missing from that picture due to, in part, the duration that these studies have been going on over. So I put together some information for council's review around the benefits of transit and how transit can impact communities specific to sort of the size of municipality that we are. So that sort of suburban rural mix and that population base in and around sort of 30,000 people. So I've put together a review of the sort of order of operations that the study has gone through, or the studies have gone through over the last number of years, so that council was well aware of the different plans that have been brought forward to them. And so it starts back in December 2024 with the public transit business plan update, which was actually an update to the original business plan, which was brought forward a few years earlier. And then most recently in September of last year, council received the transit business plan financial analysis from staff, which outlined various scenarios, which council's well aware of in terms of how the funding could work to provide the service to the public. And so we had some pretty specific tasks on that, some direction from council in terms of what information the council at the time was looking for. And then most recently in December of 2025, we brought back the fixed route transit public engagement plan for council's review. And that's where we received the direction around going out to the 11 different public engagement sessions. So through various conversations, it kind of became clear, especially during the last discussion, that some further refinement around those financial models was needed. And so that's why we've put this back together for you. So I'm going to go through very, very quickly because I'm sure we've had a chance to sort of review that. But and then the CAO is going to come in and sort of walk you through the financial scenarios as well. So I'll turn it over to her after I just give you kind of a brief update. So there's a number of economic and social benefits to providing transit for a community. And one of the biggest ones, and I've provided some research here for council, is that net value added methodology, essentially. And that basically what the studies have found, and this isn't just sort of, I've provided you with Canadian examples, but this is pretty much globally, is that transit provides a value add back into your community. The return on investment for transit for a community is literally $1 spent gives you back a net $1. So not only are you making up what you spent, but you're actually earning $1 back. And that works in the billions, not just on sort of the level that we're working at, but models all the way from Toronto's TTC to much bigger global markets. The transit model pretty much finds the same thing each time, that the benefits to your community in terms of economics, in terms of job growth, in terms of household spending, all of those things, there's a net added benefit of at least a value out of $1. And when you look at that sort of multi-tiered or the indirect impacts, that model really grows to $4 or $5 of return for every dollar spent on public infrastructure and the public funding of that transit system. I had mentioned the job creation, so a lot of the models put transit as one of the most labor-intensive ways to stimulate your economy, and I've provided some research there for council's review. And it really can be a net growth implication for your community when it's done well, and that's certainly the all of the research finds that, specifically around the Canadian Urban Transit Association. They've done a number of studies that put the numbers around 20 jobs created per $1 million spent. So lots of good research around the job implications, and certainly from our local business community, we hear it regularly. And I know that council's heard it from me before, but it is one of the biggest things that the business community has certainly repetitively asked for is that help with what we call employee mobility, or bringing those employees to work. And transit certainly is an opportunity for the community to really benefit from that public service overall, both the businesses and the residents. And then regionally, rural transit models, especially this specific study that I've referenced in this 1.3 section, looked at lowering of household costs. So it is one of the very few ways that a municipality can actually put money back into residents' pockets. Transit, is one of those things where it can actually, over time, and it does take time to get there, help to eliminate the need or the dependency on a family or a household having to have multiple vehicles. It's not certainly in every case, but a lot of the time it has the ability, as this sort of transit model builds out, as your routes kind of grow, it has the ability to actually eliminate that forced dependency of a household to need the second vehicle. And certainly that puts dollars back into their pocket. The research finds anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 a year are the cost saving to household when they have a reliable access to transit. So certainly something to keep in mind as we sort of go through these discussions for council. And so, I mean, overall, I've given you a sort of a very quick overview of some of the benefits. But certainly, if there's anyone that wants to engage in further discussion, our team is readily available to talk about transit. And certainly, we would welcome any opportunity to do so. So I'm going to turn it over to the CAO now to go through sort of the funding models that we've put together for council and committee.
Okay, Councillor Garden Cole.
No, I'm waiting till the end of the,
Okay.
I just
Go
put my
ahead.
light on. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So Graham has gone over the sort of those benefits of transit, just as a reminder. When we look at going to public consultation, we will look for all of those factors. So do you see transit helping you have access to jobs at the airport, access to higher education in the city, that type of thing? Once we get do you see the value of transit for your own person or your household, then where do we go from there with the questions? And when we talk about who's going to pay for the transit service, that's a really key question for a municipality like East Hants. You've got your general tax rate, you've got Mount Uniacke, you've got the rural areas, and then you've got this urban core where this service is proposed to be established first. Even within the urban core, the first route is sort of Sportsplex, Lance, up to Enfield to tie into that airport, Halifax Transit into the city. So then the question is, like, even within the urban service area, who should contribute to a transit service if that's the route you decide to go? So you had seen some models and reports around what would happen if the urban service rate paid 1.5 cents or 1 cent and the general tax rate paid some, that would be the 0.5 cent or 0.75 cents. Then we looked at the same model with for commercial and residential. With that model in mind, council said, well, we're going to have to ask everybody if they want to pay 1.5 cents or 0.5 cent for transit. And does that make sense given the model that we have in place? I think that kind of got us side railed with no real direction on what we go to the public with. So coming back here today to talk about not necessarily nailing down one of these models, but looking at these models and saying, is this something that we could go to the public with? Is this something we could live with if we end up going through the public consultation and everybody says that they want well, not everybody, but you get enough of people that say, yes, transit's beneficial to me. What number do we go with them, to say, yes, I could support transit, even though I might personally not use it, I could support transit for, is it $32 per household? Is it $55? Is it a rate per 100? That's the kind of information we need to get before we go to the public. So tonight, what we've done is the two models that are on the screen now. Those are the ones that came with that initial report quite a time ago. And that model, we kind of said, okay, well, commercial will pay 10%, residential pays 90%. What does that look like as far as assessment, like per $100 of assessment? So if it was the general tax rate and urban service rate paying, you're looking at that 1.5 cent or half a cent. If it's just the urban service rate model, but that same commercial pays 10, residential pays 90, then you're looking at 2.5 cents for commercial and 2.8 cents for residential. Those are sort of your base models that, you know, as you tax right now. When we started to think through, okay, is that too much? Can people afford that? What could the other models be that could be palatable for councillors to say, yep, I could support transit at that rate? So we did two things, and I'm presenting this today because I came up with this brainchild, so they said, well, you present it. There's two options here. There's several options, but the two fundamental pieces are, when you look at Graham's model or information, it really does point to the fact that commercial is the beneficiary of transit alongside residents who actually use the service. And I think your community will benefit from transit based on those $4 and $5 models long term. So if we can get, I think there's enough conversation around the room that says, you know what, the general tax rate folks don't want to pay for transit. We've heard that loud and clear from the councillors outside of this urban area. So if we take that, if we leave it on the table, the two first models are something you can work with. If you take that off the table and you say, okay, only the people in the urban service rate area are going to pay for transit, then you decide, well, how much is commercial going to pay and how much is residents going to pay? And this is all, of course, if you decide to go that route. But this is just to get a number that you're comfortable with going out to the public. So when we look at new funding models, we did two things. One was we said, what happens if we reduce the general tax rate for commercial by 5 cents and then increase the urban service rate for commercial by 10 cents? So what that does is for every other business in East Hants outside of the corridor area, we reduce your commercial rate by 5 cents. That does put some of the burden to make that up on the general tax rate. It's less than half a cent just for that GTR, but it also relieves that tax burden on your businesses in Mount Uniacke and the rural areas. With that, you could then take 10 cents on the urban service area rate and fund transit with it. That would give a 5 cent increase to the commercial tax base in the urban area. And it lessens that tax burden on your residents by 10 cents of commercial, which is much more than if you just increase it by the 5 cents. So that's one option. Then the other option would be to just increase the urban service rate in the commercial area by 5 cents. It's the same impact on the urban service rate businesses. The difference is less money is going into transit, so the burden on the residents is a little bit higher in those scenarios. Just if you can scroll up to scenario 1 for a second. So where it says there, reduce the GTR area rate, or GTR commercial rate by 5 cents, while increasing the urban service area rate by 10 cents. That model also sees businesses just outside of the urban service area, the service part, increase by 5 cents. So that was missing from the table. So if we scroll down and start to look at them, so the next thing we said, well, if we apply those two models, then what happens to the residential? So we've done two things. We've done either a tax rate for the residential, or we've done a dwelling unit fee for each residential scenario. So the tax rate scenario is exactly the same as your urban service rates, same as your general tax rate. It's per $100 of assessment. And what that will do is it will put the burden higher on those homes that are higher assessed and lower on the lower assessed homes. So if you have a $300,000 home, you're going to pay less for transit than a $600,000 home. If you do it on a per dwelling fee, the the burden for that shifts to, well, everybody would pay the same fee. So whether you choose to do it just on those folks who pay the urban service rate from Shubie down to Enfield, just along that corridor route, or if you put it on the folks that are on that periphery as well, there's different scenarios of what those per dwelling unit fees are. But then everybody's paying the same, regardless of your assessment of your home. Plus, it puts the burden more on the apartment buildings in the corridor area. So most of the apartment buildings would pay double for transit what they would under their assessment. And I say most. The examples that we've looked at, they pay a little bit more than double if you do it on a per dwelling unit fee rather than an assessment fee. So if you make the argument that you need transit and a lot of those folks who are going to use the transit live in the apartment buildings along the corridor where the transit's going to stop, then that makes sense to do it on a per dwelling unit fee. So if you look through these scenarios, I'm going to take you through them. They do get a little bit confusing, and some of it seems like nuance, but from a tax policy perspective, it's important nuance. So the very first one, option 3.1A. So this is a scenario where the urban service rate commercial, first of all, we reduce the general tax rate for commercial by 5 cents, increase the urban service rate for commercial by 10 cents, as well as the Milford and Shubenacadie urban service rate commercial would pay 5 cents, so they would be a net zero on their tax bill.
I'm confused by
Yep.
this. Can we just go back? When we say reduce the general commercial tax rate by 5 cents, is that everywhere?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So
Everywhere.
we're taking 5 cents off the urban service rate businesses, and then we're putting 10 cents back on?
Right.
Okay, it just seems like an odd way to word it, but, okay,
So the impact for that is
5 cents.
it's 5 cents on their tax bill, but it's 10 cents of their tax bill now goes to transit. So it helps keep that urban residential rate down.
But by removing that 5 cents, what's going to pay on the urban service rate, what that 5 cents we're reducing is paying now?
It's the general tax rate that'll go down on their tax bill by 5 cents.
Yeah,
And then 10 cents will get added to their tax bill to go to the urban service rate. So they're only paying 5 cents extra.
yeah. But you're saying the whole 10 cents is going to transit?
Yes,
So the 5 cents that's reduced
gets
from the
reduced.
commercial rate,
Gets reduced for everybody across the board,
Yeah.
from Mount Uniacke to
but
Walton to.
that 5 cents here in the corridor area is being used for something now, whether it's sidewalks or whatever.
Not on the general tax rate. It's being used to fund the general tax rate. It's just going into general coffers.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So the folks that are sort of in that transit area
Get it.
would be 10 cents. Milford and Shubie businesses would pay 5 cents, presuming that they will be the next route that gets added would be through Milford and Shubenacadie, if you do the urban service rate area. What that does, it keeps your urban service residential rate, if you just charge the people on the current urban service rate, 1.3 cents. If you divide that, what's left over across the urban service rate and the partial areas outside of that rate that you now charge like a cent to or 2 cents to, that would bring that down to everybody pays 1 cent per $100 of assessment. Using that same philosophy, the next option is what does that look like on a per dwelling unit fee? So if you did that and charged only those in the urban service rate, a dwelling unit fee, it would be $55 per dwelling. If you included everybody in that outside serviced area, so that would be some folks who pay streetlights and sidewalks outside of Shubenacadie and Milford. It's the Nine Mile River Streetlight District and the Enfield Grand Lake Streetlight District, they would pay, it would be $32 per home if everyone paid throughout that area. And I think there is some argument to be made for that. I mean, folks who live just outside of the transit area are probably going to use transit. So for example, in my house, I'm outside the area. My kids would absolutely use transit. My family would use transit, and I know that people in my neighborhood would use transit. If you could drop your kid off at the Lloyd Matheson Center and they could get to Dalhousie for school or for classes on a Wednesday night, then you would do that. So I'm sort of an example of, if you keep those people in the mix, then everybody in the corridor would pay $32 per dwelling unit. So the next scenario is taking that, the next scenario is similar to what we've just talked about, except there's no impact to anyone outside of just that urban service rate. So if you do that, then it's 1.9 cents per $100 of assessment, or that $55 dwelling unit fee, which is the same as what we saw above. The next group of scenarios ignores the general tax rate completely. So if you leave your general tax rate commercial the same, but you add 5 cents to the urban service area commercial rate, then everyone in the urban service rate would get 5 cents, Enfield through to Shubenacadie. The urban service rate residential would be 1.9 cents. If you spread it out across everybody, it's going to be 1 cent. And those dwelling unit fees in that scenario go up a little bit because you don't have that extra 5 cents coming in from the commercial. So you'd be at $72 per dwelling unit if you just picked the urban service rate dwellings. If you included that outer area, then you go down to $42 per dwelling unit. And then the next one is the same, except it basically ignores all of the outside the serviced area dwellings. So you would look at a commercial rate of 5 cents and a dwelling unit fee of $72 per dwelling across that urban service rate residential. So there's a lot of information there. I'm not sure if anyone's ready to sort of dive into these tonight. We can put this back on the agenda next week at council if you need more time to think about it. And really, we don't need a definitive answer tonight on this is how you're going to fund transit. What we need from council is, what do you want to put in your public consultation around transit, and what do you want to gain from each area? So if you say, for example, if you decide here tonight that you're not going to put a rate on the general tax rate, then let's eliminate those 5 sessions that we have scheduled for the rural area. We go out to the urban areas and we give them some scenarios around dwelling units. And we find out, do the people in Nine Mile River want to pay $32 if it means that they can get, on a transit bus in Elmsdale or in Enfield? We can ask those questions and get information based on sort of what district people are from, who wants to pay, who doesn't, how much do you want to pay. You could go out and say, would you pay up to $52 for transit, $72 for transit? Like it'll give us information once we find out sort of what council's thinking about how we go to the public and who we go to. So there is a motion in the report that council approves the fall 2026 public engagement sessions on public transit using funding model, and there's supposed to be a little blank set of lines there, so you can put your model in that you want, as outlined in the staff report. And again, this is just what we're going to go to the engagement session with to find out what people in the community are thinking. So, Madam Warden,
It's just like Christmas Eve.
just like Christmas. So I'm going to stop talking. and listen for
All
a
right,
bit.
we're lit up like a Christmas tree. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So ultimately, we are looking for financial direction to go out to the public.
Right.
And basically, you've taken feedback and are eliminating most of the options are eliminating having it on the GTR.
There are still options in there to have it on the GTR. Like the number 1 and 2 options are still.
And those 1 and 2 were options that were brought to us already?
Yes.
So all the new options are vastly different than that.
So the new options do impact the general tax rate a little bit, but not significantly, but it does also reduce that burden on your commercial taxes in
My
the.
problem with not having this go on the general tax rate is that just like there are a lot of people in the urban areas that won't be using this, there are a lot of people in the rural areas that won't be using it. There's a lot of people in the urban areas that won't be using it either. And we are going to make the decision that the urban tax rate are the ones that are gonna pay for it regardless. And I have a real problem with that. And I've heard from various residents in my district who have got wind of this. And for them, it doesn't mean saving $9,000 or $10,000 by eliminating a car and insurance to their household. People work shift work, people have kids that have to get places. It will have no impact on their lives other than that they're gonna be paying taxes on it. And if this is gonna be proposed to just mainly be the urban tax rate, I just don't think that that is fair to all the people in the urban areas who won't be using this and who don't want it. So obviously, a budget has been done up to come up with these rates. And this is a budget that is putting aside any monies that we may have, potentially be awarded. This is just a budget that's been put forth for what it's going to cost to run transit year by year by year.
Through you, Madam Warden, you have the chair, right? Through you, Madam Warden, this is the operating budget, assuming that we get federal funding to buy the buses and whatnot. So this is an annual operating budget that includes some money to put aside to reserves for future replacement of buses and whatnot, but not upfront capital.
I absolutely think with the commercial population being so keen on having it, that they should definitely be contributing more than some of those scenarios for sure, if it's that impactful to them. So and as far as communities, that's something we would decide later, where these community meetings would be held?
Through you, Madam Warden, I think if it's decided that generally the urban service rate folks would have the lion's share of the burden of paying for this, then you wouldn't need to, there's 5 public sessions in Mount Uniacke and in the rural area right now scheduled, or as a motion on the books. So those, I assume council would eliminate if an option was chosen to not charge the general tax rate. But that's up to council.
That would depend on the perceived impact on the general tax rate by whatever scenario was selected.
So ultimately, it's gonna be council that's gonna make this decision.
Absolutely.
On which scenario it goes with. And once all the information is gathered from the residents, ultimately it will be council deciding whether to go ahead or not.
Absolutely.
So this is my issue with that. We have, 6 urban, we've got 4 corridor that would be vastly impacted by this, and 2 others, according to this, somewhat, with the potential for more. And then we've got 5 other districts that wouldn't be contributing to this at all,
Depending on what council chooses as a model.
depending on what
Yes.
council chooses. So I just have concerns about how easy it would be to vote for transit when your residents are not going to be financially impacted by it. And that's it for me for now.
Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. One of the things that, when I was looking at these proposals, that brought to mind is when we're talking about cents on commercial versus cents on the general tax rate, 1 cent of commercial assessment raises, according to the numbers in our last thing, around $22,830 is what 1 cent commercial raises for taxes. 1 cent residential is almost 270,000. So 5 cents is not even half a cent of what revenue is on the general tax rate. So when you're talking about dropping the general tax rate for commercial, the impact is gonna be very negligible because of the way assessments are going. So our assessment increase will mean I can't foresee, unless something falls out of the sky, that looking at lowering the GSTR for commercial is gonna have any impact on the general tax rate at all. It will be so small, you won't even notice it. One of the things that I was thinking as we're going through the transit thing and looking at stuff, and Councilor Garden Cole brings up a good point, but I want the residents of this area to realize every time they go to their pool, the people in Walton pay for it, the people in Mount Uniacke pay for it, everybody pays for that pool that is used here by the majority of people in this area. And if you look at the tax base of the general tax rate, 2 of the top 3 highest districts are nowhere near that pool. So when you talk about people making decisions were made that everybody paid for the pool by everybody on council because it was the best thing for the municipality. And I do believe that the people sitting around here at the end of the day will all make the best decision for the municipality. Because if we look at our oath, municipality first, our districts are second. I just want to make sure to remind everybody of that if people are forgetting it, because sometimes I do myself. And I would have no problem canceling anything throughout the rural or the Mount Uniacke area if it is council's wish to go with one of the models where, it's heavily subsidized by the commercial and a lesser impact on the residential for the areas that have the service. And then in the future, as we go to expand service, we would do a similar model of, go out to that area, do they want it, here's what it would cost, and the additions and stuff would all be done at that time. Because I do believe that the model, one of the models in this scenario where we talk about lowering the general commercial tax rate across the board by 5 cents, gives every area in the future that if the transit expands, that 5 cents could go back onto initially the commercial in those areas as being the first place to fund, because the precedent would be set in this area. So it kind of gives the path forward as we grow, as areas develop, that the model of commercial leading the transit cost gets ingrained into our systems rather than having to rehash things over and over again. I do want to say I like the fact that there was a lot of scenarios to choose from. It is a lot of information to digest. It took me a while to wrap my head around some of them, but it's great that we had multiple options to look at, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And through you to Graham. Graham, I just wanted to thank you for not just this report, but all of these reports. I know it's a lot of work putting it together, and it was another interesting read for sure. I understand the concerns of rural councillors about sensitivities around these funding models. As an aside, the transit route map, going back a bit from the WSP consultants presentation in December of 2024, it showed that District 6, Northlands, Milford, at least my understanding, was outside the proposed transit route. So I do get where you're coming from. But I understand that was a concept map and the actual routing could change. That said, my understanding is that rural residents in HRM and Kings for both transit systems do pay for a portion of their transit services. It is a shared effort. I like the option one models because they offer a structure that keep commercial and residential rates lower in both urban and rural areas. I understand we haven't surveyed our residents on this in a number of years, and this public consultation will be an important piece before final decisions are made. And one comment, I agree with Councillor Perry that there certainly were a lot of funding models, options provided. One theme that I saw was, a recurring kind of a shift, if you will, over to the commercial side. And I get it that some of that commercial will be apartment buildings, but also, if I understand
No,
correct.
Those are residential.
Oh, those are
They
resident,
would be in the per dwelling unit.
commercial,
Commercial is just businesses.
yes, but was there not an increase in the commercial rates? Yes, so thank you. So going
The
with the,
apartments don't pay commercial rates, I guess is what she's trying to say.
oh, sorry. So, but going back to commercial, I'll focus on that, thank you. With the commercial rate increase structure, I am sensitive to the fact that, business owners do already pay quite a bit of tax. And, I'm just conscious of shifting that burden to the business community, as one of the options. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Those are my comments, and that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Just a little bit of clarification. Now, going through this, I understand, from what I'm understanding is you're going to decrease the general tax rate for commercial right across the board. Is that correct? In some of these scenarios?
In some of those scenarios.
All right. But then again, on some of them, you're gonna put it back on, put 10 cents or whatever back on the urban service rate, and the majority of people will be paying for it in this area, correct?
Yeah.
However, but what confuses me is when the warden said, well, it may have some impact on our general tax rate. Is that correct? Can you,
So there will be, if you reduce the general tax rate by 5 cents across the board, there will be
General commercial.
the general
tax rate.
commercial tax
commercial.
rate
right?
across the board. There will be an impact on your general revenue by about $130,000-ish dollars. 1 cent raises about $26,000 on your commercial general tax rate. So, but the assessments that you'll get between now and next year will more than, to Councillor Perry's point, there will be an impact, but it's not going to mean an increase in a tax rate. It might mean less of a decrease. So yes, the answer is yes, about $130,000 worth of general tax rate from the commercial would be missing from your bottom line next year.
Yeah, right, I understand that, but there would be in most of those scenarios, other than one or two or one, then there would be no impact on the residential rate for.
Not the general tax rate residential. It would impact the urban service rate residential.
Yeah, okay, so that's where I was a little bit confused.
The only issue would be if, and it won't happen, but if we did not have an increase in assessments large enough to cover that $130,000 that's not going into the general coffers, then there would be
Right.
a half
Then
a
that's
cent or
never-
thereabouts increase in the
Yeah.
general tax rate.
And that's not going to.
Well, I'm very pleased that somebody was listening and, they're not gonna put this on the Mount Uniacs and there's options to not put it on the Mount Uniacs in the rural area. And to me, if it's accepted in this area, it would be more so the people used it. And there wouldn't be any need for meetings out in those areas because it wouldn't affect the general tax rate residential. And I'll be truthful, There are, you know, I was here when this zoning thing come in. There was some meetings there that was very vocal, and I can hear already the sentiment building around transit in the rural area. And that's not to scare anybody, but that's just plain and simple. They don't want to pay for it. But I'm struggling with, why would we want to take it off if in an area that's not going to have anything to do with transit? Why would we take it off the general rate or commercial rate in that area? It's just because they're not going to have anything to do with transit. I can see taking it off here and putting an extra, saying to me, that's juggling, because you should just build them to what it is instead of taking 5 off here, putting 10 on here. However, I'm struggling with that, but I'm struggling with, why would you take it off in the areas that are not gonna be?
So, through you, Madam Chair, we only have one commercial tax rate, general tax rate. There is another option here, a third option, which is to reduce the commercial general tax rate by 5 cents, but only for those folks in the urban service area. So everyone else remains the same,
Well, to me, that would make more sense.
but then you're gonna have 2 commercial tax rates, one for this area and one for the rest, which is fine. But I remember what happened last time you
Yeah.
proposed multiple tax rates.
I
in
did.
East
We were
Hants.
on the losing end of that one, but anyway.
And I really like my job.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
didn't put that in here, but that is another option. So if you wanted to, the whole idea is to
But it
get-
could be easily, in my mind.
That's
to-
easily
to-
explained.
It's easily explained to the commercial people in my area.
Yes, and it's less
Right?
of an impact on the general tax rate, what you have to recover for that. That's absolutely an option. We could work it so that you have a different general tax rate for those folks who will pay for the transit rate. Wade and Jordan are probably poking needles in my eyes as we speak, but we can configure the system that way if that makes more sense to council. It is doable.
Well, I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of council. I'm only speaking for the ones in District 5. I could explain that to the commercial people in my area, because look, they're paying more for transit in the end. You can explain that, and there's no discrimination to me. And going back, way back, to me, I felt that was discriminatory when we did that 3 tax. And to me, it wouldn't be no discrimination there. They're paying for a service,
So the
they're
other
paying for it, right?
Through you, Madam Chair, the other option there is you collect your general tax rate as usual. You take 5 cents of it from what you collect on the urban service rate and give it to transit. So you don't have to have 2 different tax rates, but then you are giving sort of almost a grant to transit from the general.
From the general rate, and there's
That's
where
the easy way to do it.
Yeah,
But
but-
politically, that has connotations that,
that does,
some of
because
the
the
general
general,
rate is
because the
paying
commercial
for-
people in my area say, no, we don't want to be paying for transit.
right.
No.
So however you work it,
Mm-hmm.
the reducing your full general rate and then upping your urban service rate, that is more politically sensitive, I guess. But from an administrative point of view of configuration of a tax system, et cetera, internally, we could make that work.
Now, having
different
said
manner.
another thing, if that's the way we go, and I hear what Councillor Perry said on the pool, and I understand that. However, this is a different baby, this is a different issue. And I would, actually, if it's not going to affect, if we went by the way is we're gonna stay the same commercial, nothing changes in our area, I would feel that it wouldn't be in my place to wade in and vote on something that it should be a decision of the urban service rate, not somebody that has no effect on it whatsoever, because this is a big ticket issue until the time that it's proposed to branch out into things. And then it would be somewhat different. But I really feel if that's the way I'd like to see it go, but I would feel that the ones in the urban service rate should have the bulk of the say and lead it from there. So those are just my thoughts right now. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, from a governance point of view, council will have to make the ultimate decision. There's nothing to say that you couldn't create a subcommittee of the transit, of the urban service rate counselors to have those more detailed discussions, if that's the route the council wants to go. And then generally, whatever recommendation comes forward from that committee, those of you not on the urban service rate would support that committee recommendation. That is an option if you, once we get through the public consultation and there's something to chew on, then maybe that's the route you want to go.
It seems to be a more equitable and fair avenue going by what you suggested.
Until you get to Councillor Hebb's district.
Anyway, that's it, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Great report and a great conversation. And I have a question for John before I start. John, with the building permit we're having, are we seeing the same growth as last year and the year before and stuff?
Sorry.
Through you, Chair. Yes, I haven't looked at it in the last few weeks or whatever, but I think we're generally on track with what we've seen in the last couple of years.
Okay. So if we're still on track, and every year, I've been on council for 10 years now, we have been reducing the tax by 1 cent, 2 cents, or 3 cents. So my point is, why don't we put it all on general tax rate and we use our formula? You give back to Mount Uniac whatever you can percentage, like you use the money you use for transit here, you give us our kickback until transit come to Mount Uniac, and you give the rural areas their kickback. That formula is working everywhere, every
Call
time we
them
do.
kickbacks.
No, it's not. It's not kickback, like it's equalization, yeah, so why don't we use that? And I think everybody will be happy because the way we're growing, I think we're gonna end up, instead of ending up reducing the general tax rate by 1 or 2 cents, I think that will cover the transit and the people that not using it, instead of getting reduce their general tax rate for next year, we will get some money for recreation, for something we can use, fire department, for something like that. This way, we don't have to end up with 2 general tax rate for commercial or anything like. Something to think about. Thank you.
Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I'm not gonna weigh in too much on the financial part of it so far. But I just wanna say thank you to staff for this report as well. Like it's, like Councillor Marion said and some other councillors, incredible amount of work went into this. And in this report, it really highlights the benefit of a transit system in East Hants. And if there's one thing I'm sure of, we've gotta somehow make this happen, you know, with the money that's on the table from the federal.
That's
What's that?
Potentially.
potential money.
Potential money. And the benefits that it is to some people, like Councillor Garden Cole said, you know, there'll be lots of people in the urban area here along the corridor area that don't use it either. But you know, when I saw, you know, there'll be students using it to get into universities in town, or maybe seniors using it to get to healthcare downtown. I know what in other areas across Canada, people do use the transit, and some more, some less type of thing. We've just never been used to it, and there's obviously some fear about how it would be paid for. I just hope we can come to a decision of how we can resolve this. So far, I'm kind of liking the option there. You have one option where it would be either $55 or $32 a month.
That's a year.
A year rather, yeah, a year. That would scare people if it was a month. And that wouldn't be, the rural area wouldn't be contributing in that case?
No. Well, through the reduction of your general commercial rate, there would be a little bit of an uptick, but primarily the urban service rate.
That depends on your definition of rural area when you get into your PSR.
Right.
Part of it.
Well, I just hope we don't get bogged down in this too much. That seems to be a very reasonable solution to get this started. Like, we could get into arguments about, oh, the pool's over here, but, you know, I assume that Mount Uniac must use pools in Sackville or arenas in Sackville or Windsor. That's just the way a municipality set out, that happens, just because of the geography. It's gonna be hard to just go tit for tat all the way through. We'll be here for weeks and months trying to figure this out. That option sounded fairly good to me, but whatever the case is, based on the merits of what a transit system would mean to East Hants and to some people that are here, like, I wouldn't use it, and I know a lot of people that wouldn't use it, but I can see some of the people that staff pointed out here that would use it. It would be a huge benefit and to them, and it would be a huge benefit to commercial. So I hope we can get this thing moving quick. That's all the comments I have.
Thank you. Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'd just like to state first, I believe transit is a necessity. We're going to need transit in the corridor area for sure. I understand the people in Walton, Selma, no, they're probably never going to have transit there. Mount Uniac, I've heard Councillor Perry speak towards the need of transit there now. People do use it by going to Sackville and taking it, so I can see it quite, if we can get it working, first of all, it's kind of as a phase one in the corridor area, it eventually will be in Mount Uniac, especially with the growth we're seeing in Mount Uniac. So I think we will get there. I was, like Councillor Rhino, I thought if we're going to fund it through the corridor area, the urban service rate and the partial service rate, then why do we reduce the commercial rate in the other parts, the rural parts? Not really a big, but I can see that. But I do remember the problems with the multiple tax rates. I wasn't on council, but I can certainly remember the uproar. And I didn't agree with it then. I think it's a good idea we don't do something like that, but possibly that would be good. But I also realize that I guess not all of Councillor Merriam's area would be sort of outside of it because he straddles Lance and Milford. But Milford and Shubenacadie, I would like to see them, if we get this established very quickly, come online. Because I do know people in Shubenacadie that have said, if you're gonna get transit, then we need it. And I think one of the things that we have to realize that there's a lot of students at Hants East that may live in 9 Mile River, may wherever, but they could travel to after-school jobs on transit. Like, it's overflow for cars at Hants East Rural High now. They had to put up no parking zones to keep them from parking out on Trunk 2 and blocking it off and build more parking there. So there's, you know, and one of the reasons is these cars get used so the students can then go on to work after school hours. Yeah. So I can see it certainly being used that way. Plus, if it was, you know, available to people in Shubenacadie, I can see people, you know, teenagers, whatever, coming to the pool, coming to the sportsplex. I do know families in Shubenacadie that went from having 2 cars because each parent had to have a car to get to Halifax. Then their children started working, going to university. They now have 3 cars. So I really do see that even though people wherever, as Councillor Garden Cole said, don't think they'd ever use it, they may surprise themselves and find that they do benefit from it and will use it. I kind of like the go to a fee for the residential just because people see exactly it's fair right across the board, because obviously myself, if my house was in Lance, I'd be paying a higher assessment than I do because I'm in the middle of a field in Shubenacadie. There's a difference there, so I like the fee idea that way. that maybe that would be fair. Not saying that the other isn't fair either, but, so there's a lot to consider here. I don't think we're going to nail it down tonight as to which one we present to people. But, I do agree with Councillor Rhino also that, it was one of my thoughts, that if we're not going to be extending it to the warden's area, Councillor Rhino's district, then we can't take the vote away from them, but there should be a subcommittee to kind of talk this over. It's going to affect our residents more so than them, where it won't really affect them at all tax-wise, and taxes is what everybody in every district is concerned about. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, and the CAO has another comment.
Just on the reduction of the commercial tax rate by the 5 cents, another thought had crossed my mind when we first started talking about this, and Councillor Moose's comment around the equalization reminded me. One thing you could do, you could keep your general tax rate the same, and then take 5 cents of it from this area, give it to transit, take 5 cents of it from the rural area, give it to your fire fund, and take 5 cents of it from Mount Uniac and give it to your recreation fund. So that it has the same impact on your general rate, but it does give the other areas something back directly to the funds that you've set up to put those kinds of fees in. So you don't have to decide that tonight, but if in general, that reduction of 5 cents on that commercial rate, increasing it by 10 cents in the urban service area is the model that you want to go with, then go out to the public with, then I think there's other things you can do with that 5 cent reduction in those other areas. And I would like to say as well, for the Shubenacadie and Milford, our models sort of do show that iterative growth in the transit model. And knowing that Milford has 800 potential transit customers every day at that high school, or however many students they have, I think you would get there fairly quickly once you establish that transit service and understand how it works and sort of get to build out that model to reach the other ends of the corridor.
Okay. I'm going to go to Councillor Mitchell next because he hasn't spoken yet, and then to the Deputy Warden, and then I'll cycle back through. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and thank staff for the report. There's lots of information here and lots of discussion, and my mind just keeps like it's in the whirl of what I'm thinking. I wrote down on my notepad that option 3(1)B is the option that I would prefer, because it is the one that deals with the per dwelling unit. But I was looking years down the road to demographics of East Tenants as people age. You're going to have some people based on health reasons that cannot or not allowed to drive, and they would need some way to get from A to B. Students that aren't old enough to drive, want to go to a friend's house after school, they could jump on the transit and go and visit. So there's mental health issues that you could alleviate by providing a service that, and I know I'm getting older, and maybe down the road that I won't be allowed to drive. So I'll walk to the end of the street, jump on the bus, and whether I go shopping or go visit a friend, I might just get on there just to go sightseeing. I've done it before, and I'll continue to do it in the city. So those are some of the thoughts that I was thinking about, not maybe in the next 3 or 4 years, but 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road. That this is going to provide something that some people just can't afford, but they can enjoy. And when your mental health gets you in a state that you need to get out of the house or the apartment or your dwelling, that you can jump on a transit and just go for the drive. So keep that in mind as we age, that I might not have a license and Calvin might have to come and drive me around with the top down. But that's something that I'm thinking about, not just in the immediate, but looking as we age. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to what Councilor Mitchell was saying about the people ability to get around, I also was interested in the option 3.1B until the CAO just brought up the idea of sharing it with, keeping it to 5 cents, and for the fire departments would be another good option. But
That's the rural fire departments.
the rural fire departments, yes. I'm also a parent with, I had 3 kids. I had one working at the airport, one working at Elmsdale coffee shop, and it was probably cheaper for me to pay them rather than drive them back and forth all the time. So there's gonna be other convenience that maybe some of our local youth can get to the sportsplex, get to the job after school, get to activities at the pool that would be helpful to a lot of parents. And maybe some of these parents would reduce from 2 vehicles down to 1 or 3 down to 2 and support them. I think we've pretty well covered every other scenario, but I do like the 3.1B and per dwelling, and maybe with the CAO's further comments on the other one, maybe we can look at that. We've been talking a while, I'm gonna pause.
So just for clarification, a lot of you have said you like option 3.1B with the dwelling unit fee. That does reduce that general tax rate by 5 cents while increasing your urban service rate by 10 cents for transit, which gets you to those reasonable dwelling unit fees. If you decided to do that, then it's, and to spread the love to the fire departments and to the Mount Recreation fee, you simply wouldn't reduce your general tax rate. You would keep it the same, but allocate 5 cent grants out to those areas. So, pardon? Yeah,
I just go back to what Councillor Rhino said in the first place, and, yeah.
Right.
Okay, next, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. Yeah, I forgot, I'm glad Councillor McPhee mentioned it about the corridor area. Councillors should have subcommittee. I have no problem with that, and I would like to listen to what they come up with. And one more thing, I don't know, it's about funding or something. It could relate to funding, but I know I drove my kids and my nephew and niece to Sackville to take the bus to Dalhousie and stuff. And it's a nightmare at the peak times. They have bus every 10 minutes and it fill up in 2 seconds. So what's gonna happen here if we start charging people fees for transit and we couldn't put up with the, like, it was overwhelming. What's the plan B for another bus? Like, how's it gonna happen? So have we ever thought about this scenario, if we need more buses, what's gonna happen then? Because it's gonna be in the millions, not in 1,000 or 2, so.
So there is work being done by Link Nova Scotia on sort of the Halifax to Truro capacity for transit. So we wouldn't be going on this alone. We would know and have support to build out some capacity. The models Graham can speak to around the modeling and whatnot. If that were to happen and you needed more buses, then you would go seek some funding from either Link Nova Scotia or the federal government. We're part of a larger transit plan for the, what's it called, the CMA, the metropolitan area for Halifax, so we're part of that transit application. So I'm not worried that there wouldn't be funds to source additional buses as you grow out your service.
As long you thought, I never, I just want to mention it to know that we have a backup plan if there's something like that happen. Thank you.
Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'd just like to say, if this was coming at no cost, I would say bring it on. I think that, there will be lots of good things. But at this time where we are at and our residents are at and our community and our municipality and across the province and the country, I just have concerns with bringing something that people, not everybody's going to use. Probably overall, when numbers will be a small percentage of people will use, and adding it on to the tax rate. So that's what it comes down to for me is my concerns. But the best thing to do is hammer this out and take it out to the public and see what they have to say and go from there. Thank you.
Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Warden. You know, there's discussion going around, and, you know, with, I think another option was, you know, to leave it on the general tax rate and then give so much back to, you know, with your fire department. Look, it's much cleaner if I can say to my residents, we're not paying for it. Plain and simple. We're not paying for it, because if you get into the scenario, then I can just see people, groups coming up and think, well, why do you always give it to fire department? Why didn't you give some to our group? So it's just much simpler to go say, we're not paying for it. The areas that are using it are. So I would not favor, you know, that discussion around that. It's just, I'd rather go with, to me, with, I can explain it to the commercial people in my area, we're not paying for transit, they are, that's why they got a little bit, but they're paying actually more in the end. Again, it don't make sense to me to take it off 5 cents here, but put 10 cents on here. Why don't you just put the 10 cents or whatever, or 5 cents or whatever it is on it and deal with it? It's simpler. Thank you.
Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Warden. No, 100% in support for any subcommittee that wants to be raised. There's been some really good discussion. When I looked at, after hearing Councilor, or Deputy Warden Dixon talk about option 1B3 and looking at that and seeing what the dwelling cost is, if one family uses it for one trip to the airport and home, you've saved more because it's over $100 to park and fly. So if you just take one trip with that, you've already saved more than what you would have paid in tax. And the last number of years, we've thrown 2 cents on the fire departments in this area without a blink of an eye. And many people don't get any, hopefully get no service from the fire department because they don't need them. Transit is a service. It is something to be looked at, equivalent to the fire department, equivalent to the police. It is a service for the public, and it's the only service that actually can create some revenue back to help cover its cost. If it ever did get full and you couldn't get a spot on a bus, every transit place in the world would love to see that, because that means they're making money. So, I look forward to continuing hearing the discussion. But the other thing that is a big thing throughout all areas of East Hants is arriving safe at home, right? Very few areas have taxis, and the taxi services that are here aren't the greatest. Uber's not reliable in East Hants. And so if there was transit, especially in this area where it is built up and there are such drinking establishments and things, it would be an alternative for people to take home after possibly going out for dinner or going to a friend's house or something. I can go down the street and catch the bus and go home. And that leads to a safer community. So that's another way to think about it when you look at the fee. Like I said, if I lived in this area, I would be a huge proponent for it. Because as Councillor Mitchell said, anytime something new comes in, people are always resistant to change, right? And then once something comes and people start to use it and they realize how convenient it is, you'd be surprised how quick people's minds switch and move forward, and it becomes something they want. And then in the future, take for granted that they have. So it's definitely one of the things, through going through multiple FCMs and talking to multiple different communities and municipalities of our size and that are smaller, that have transit, what it has done for their communities. And it's those conversations that changed my mind on transit many years ago, of taking it from being just a cost to a service, and understanding how smaller municipalities than us have transit services and why they see the value in it. Thank you.
Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair. So what we're looking for is just a motion to go out and engage with the
No.
public on the options that are here now?
What we're looking for tonight is a motion to go out to the public with one of these options
Oh, we
as
got,
the financial model. So if it's option,
As the CAO said, this is a lot of information. If folks want it, it could certainly, that motion would not have to be made until council next Wednesday night if people wanted more time to mull the options over.
Well, if people want more time to mull it over, I wouldn't make the motion, but I'd be happy to make a motion and get on with it. I'll just
you.
see if anybody else wants to have something to say, but I would like to just get on with something here.
Counselor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Warden. And question through you to the CAO or other staff as appropriate. I'd just like to learn a little bit more, if you're privy to the information on, looking at the two transit systems that come to mind are King's Transit and Halifax Transit Systems. And I believe both of them have built into their structure having residents, most if not all. I believe in Kings County, all residents pay something for transit. In HRM, I believe it's called the Regional Transportation Rate, and it applies, I think they said, Jador pays like really on the outskirts, like most areas pay, maybe a few don't, but I digress. I'm just wondering, just to give it some perspective, if these are two operating transit systems and they have a cost, a structure to do cost recovery by including most of the residents, can you, this is just my assimilation of information, but can staff add some perspective comparatively on what other systems are doing and why they're doing that, please?
Go ahead, Graham.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, if we've looked at that a number of times in the business plans, what other systems do and how they level or how they basically raise the funds to cover the costs. And both of the systems that you just referenced do charge larger areas than necessarily where every route goes. The long and the short of it is that's just what they do. But there are models as well. Ontario comes to mind where in smaller municipalities it is just based on a rate. I think it comes down a lot of the times in talking with our consultant to the specifics of that municipality or that town that's running the operating system and how their geography, things like where their assessment bases are, all of those come into play. So there's no one right model. It's what model is right for that municipality, I think. But the two that you do mention, yes, they have larger catchment areas than just necessarily the routing.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on comments that Councillor Garden Cole made earlier and others. That this in the past few months, sitting down at the kitchen table with residents and going over line by line, what the tax bill and what what it's made up of, and comments like not using this, this is too much, et cetera, et cetera. And the stark reality is we'll be having those conversations, with, it's a thing, right? Even in more urban areas of the municipality, it's going to be very charged in terms of, yes, of course, some people will use it. Yes, transit's a great thing. Not to bore my colleagues, but I mean, this week I've been on transit. I use transit every week, all the time. So I'm a huge believer, but there's a cost associated with it. And I'm kind of, I'm kind of seeing with I get it. If you're a counselor from a non-corridor area, there's a certain appeal of saying, you guys work it out, and if you want to pay for it, that's great. I just simply come back. I personally, I need more time to digest this rather than make a decision tonight. But I will say there's a certain appeal in having a successful transit system in terms of having, what's the expression? Many hands make light work. It's an expensive system, and looking at one of the options, I think it was option 1. And, it seemed to me on a $500,000 assessment, the GTR residential would be something like $30, in option one, give or take. So $30, yeah, yes, that's, I'm not saying that's not a lot of money, but that's not a month, that's a year. Again, and that's for 500. If it's half of that, it's $15 per year. And it would just, my argument is that it would help make the system viable and more politically acceptable in the urban areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Tingley?
I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make the motion, the recommended motion here, and we can go to for engagement on option 3.1B.
We did have one counselor request extra time to digest this information already.
Yeah, I'm still going to make the motion because the way I feel, there's no perfect situation here, and we could bat this around forever, and there's going to be different opinions on it, and this one might not be, people might not accept it, but I can see us talking about this till the cows come home. And I think we could put it out there and engage with people, and if it doesn't fly, it doesn't fly. But,
Do we
You know-
have a seconder? Second. Moved and seconded. On before the motion, we have Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I thought we were going with different option for the public. Are we going with one option? Like we're gonna make the decision now and go with one option? So, well, I could say my favorite option is the one that the CAO talk about. And for Councillor Rhino's discussion about it, if he doesn't want to give the fire department more money, we could reduce the fire department rate over there in any area by the amount that we're giving them, and we end up with zero change to the taxpayers. And that's how we did with recreation in Mount Uniac. We took from the fire department and we gave it to recreation, and everybody accepted it. So instead of going to the fire department because they didn't need it, we used it for recreation. So you will not see any difference on the general tax rate or on the all-in rate if you reduce your fire department by the amount you give them on the other hand. And this will work for us in Mount Uniac, and I think this will work for here. So that will be my preferred option. So I don't know about the others,
CAO
but
wants to add some clarification there.
So councillors, with the motion that's on the floor right now, you don't need to decide all that detail around the commercial rate. The question that would go to the public would be, would you be willing to pay up to $32 a year for transit? Or would you be willing to pay up to $55 a year for transit based on that motion? Now, they might word it differently than that, but that's essentially and then by district, you would see who's willing to pay that. And there would be some reference to an increase of 5 cents to the commercial rate in the urban area. But the survey wouldn't get into, we're gonna reduce the general, we're gonna up it would just be for transit, would you be willing to pay this? So we don't have to decide what happens to that 5 cent reduction in the general rate. The premise is just that 10 cents of the urban service commercial rate would end up going to transit, which makes those two dwelling unit fees come into play.
okay.
Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I just have a question about that. So you are not going to solidify that and decide whether it's 32 or 55 in the motion. You are going to.
That is the option B, is both of those options.
Is both of those. So you are going to go out and ask someone if they are willing to pay 32 or else 55?
Well, you could, I don't know how they'll word it, but it could be up to 55. Would you be willing to pay up to $55 a
Well,
year for transit?
who would ever be willing to pay 55 if they have the option to pay 32?
Well, for example, if you're willing to pay 55, you'd be willing to pay 32. I don't know how they're gonna word it, but the general consensus is that if it's up to 55, and if you go out and all the people in that PSR area say no, then council may want to say, well, you know what? The people in that area don't want to pay, so we're going to go with the 55.
But
We have to have something to go with.
I understand that, but that means that, so the other areas didn't want to put it on the GTR, so let's get it off the GTR. People don't want to pay 32, so let's get it off there, because it's going to come down to people in the urban service rate. If other people decide they don't want to pay, they're not going to have any choice. It just seems like we should be the ones deciding whether it should go out to the residential areas that may be impacted and
You
to their
are.
advantage.
If you pass this motion, you're the ones deciding what goes.
I just think that's an odd thing to take out to the residents. To ask them if they would be willing to pay 32 or 55.
Well, as I said,
I
I'm not a
suspect-
survey writer. They may
I
say, will you be
suspect
willing
they
to pay
would
up
just say
to
up to
55?
55, because we haven't made a decision on,
Okay, the second thing is, so this is going to be going, the first thing that's going to happen is this is going to be going to residents through meetings or through a survey?
I'm not sure which is first.
go ahead, Graham.
Through Madam Chair. So essentially, the survey and the public engagement sessions will be at the same time. The cue cards or the postcards that were proposed to be sent out would still go out to whatever area council decides, and those would provide the option to either complete the survey at the time when you receive the card. We don't anticipate the mail out going out, like there's no point in going out months ahead of time. You're gonna go out within weeks of those sessions being, the dates being sort of coming due. So in essence, those two would be running side by side. There will
Okay.
also be the option when people actually attend the public engagements, we'll have the QR codes there. If people need help, we'll have some paper copies, et cetera.
Okay, gotcha. So my request is that any information or the survey that's going to be sent out to the residents come to council first so that we can see it. And any information that's going to be presented to council, to the residents at the meeting, that we see that beforehand. Is that okay?
Through you, Madam Chair, so council's already received the survey. It would just be clarifying the second last question on the survey that had the dollar amounts associated with it. So we can certainly bring that back to council.
Okay.
And similarly, if council would like to see sort of the poster boards, et cetera, we can provide those in some PDF form
No,
or
just
something.
more depending on like how the meetings, just like say with our last meeting, just how the meeting's gonna go, like agenda wise, or, yeah, just,
absolutely.
yeah, like to see that. Okay, thank you.
When you say you'd like to see it, I'm just thinking timing, you don't meet in August. We're gonna be prepping a lot of the stuff for September engagement. So if we don't, do you just want us to send it out and get your feedback on it by email? Is that?
Well, before it's finalized,
Yes, but.
Yeah.
But before, like, I don't know that we'll have another meeting to get to you before we want to start advertising these sessions and making sure we have, like, there's a lot to get ready for. I
yeah,
think.
I would just like,
We'll
I
send-
mean,
We'll send a
yeah,
package out by email.
I
that
just
you
think
can
it's
feedback to.
reasonable for us to see the survey
And
that's going
we
out.
do have a date in September set aside for planning in case it's needed in early
For
September.
PIMS.
For-
That's for, yeah.
But
Okay,
we do have
Okay.
that.
great, thanks.
motion on the floor?
There is, Counselor Garden Cole was on prior to
On for the motion.
And I'm going to go next to Counselor Hebb because he hasn't spoken yet.
It's unusual, isn't it? Thank you, Warden. Just one question. Partial service rate areas. Now, in District 3, we have the Sportsplex area, and then we have the streetlight area. So I'm just asking which area that would be under the partial service rate.
So again, that can be all decided in the fine point. This analysis used the streetlight area, just because we needed a data set to
Okay.
use.
I mean, it would be important to me to know that before we went to a public meeting, to know that, the people in Harvard Land, are they gonna be paying for this or not,
Yeah.
That's very good, thank you.
This used the streetlight area, but
Yeah.
that area doesn't beyond sort of the Belnan section.
Oh, yes, it
From
does.
an urban, no, it does, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make a huge difference in that $32 versus $55. Like it's, once
Well,
you get the
Goes all the way
density,
up to upper nine.
right, but the number of dwelling units, comparatively speaking, like it's not gonna make that $32 go to, 45.
Okay.
It's gonna make it go from like 32 to 34 or something like that if you take the
I
section
understand
out,
that
so.
now, yeah, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Rhino.
All right, thank you, Madam Ward. Just clarity around this motion. So, option 3(1)(b), that would have no impact on the residential rate in a rural area, correct? If this passes.
It does reduce the general rate by 5 cents, so
General commercial rate.
I'm getting to that, but
Yeah.
it's nothing on that. But it would reduce a general commercial rate by 5 cents.
yes.
Okay. So honestly, as I stated before, I got a pit in my stomach because I think it's very fair that if this motion would not be charging anything on the to the residents in the rural area. I think that's fair. I think it's great. However, I just don't think it's quite fair on the commercial tax rate, 5 cents for an area that's not gonna see it. I just feel that I'm gonna owe somebody down the road somewhere. However,
You can propose an amendment, Counselor.
however, I like to be fair about it. Now, if this motion passes, would it be prudent at this time to then create a motion of a committee of the urban service rate? Or would we wait until after we come back from the public meetings and if this option is taken, there'd be no need for meetings in the rural area?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the key tonight would be to reduce the number of meetings in the rural area.
So that would do that, right?
We can
Correct?
bring back a terms of reference for a subcommittee of the urban service counselors in September, whenever we get the results back
Okay.
from the survey.
Then at that time, we could then create if we wished, create a subcommittee then in September.
Right,
Am I correct?
yes. And you don't need to decide if the whole municipality reduces by 5 cents on the commercial general rate tonight either. You can decide that later. The premise is that the urban service rate commercial would definitely have to decrease if you're gonna increase it by 10 cents on the other side. So your concerns around the commercial don't have to be decided tonight for the rest of the municipality. They do have to be, in this model, those urban service rate commercial general has to reduce by 5 cents if you're gonna increase it by 10 cents for.
But however, it does point to this 5 cent
Yes.
rate in the rural area, right?
Right, but
Right.
that's just to get to that $55. So if this is your model and you're okay with reducing the general tax rate by 5 cents,
Mhm.
you can change that at budget time. You can just do the urban service rate by 5 cents, like the urban service area by 5 cents, or however you want to do it. The key is that you're willing to reduce the commercial tax rate for the urban area by 5 cents
For the
in
urban
order
area.
to increase it by 10 for transit.
So then,
The reduction in the rural area on the commercial rate would have little to no bearing
none.
on the per dwelling unit fees, which is the meat and potatoes that would be going to
so
the public.
basically it would be a mere pittance.
It has no impact for tonight's decision.
No. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the explanation.
Okay, folks, Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Warden, through you to the CAO. So for District 4, was it all of District 4 is part of the PSR? Or is it like District 3 where it's only part of the district? Because I don't think the people at the far end of the North Salem Road are any different than people at the far end of District 3.
Yeah, so, through you, Madam Warden, the outside the serviced area, that PSR goes up to, around Ryan's Creek area. And again, the per dwelling unit numbers from out in that area are much smaller than sort of in that village core and throughout the corridor. So they're in this analysis, but if the committee that gets put together decides that it's some other line that you want to draw, then
Yeah, it wouldn't be
yeah.
a significant amount of people, so we
Right.
could do sort of the same thing as the Shubenacadie streetlight area
Yeah.
could be the people that pay the,
That is the area, is that Shubenacadie streetlight
Oh, so
sidewalk
that-
area rate?
yes, okay,
Yeah.
so that's what I was, okay, very good, thanks.
Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden, and I want to refresh this council that every year we get 4 RCMP officers, and we didn't have to raise the general tax rate at all. We reduced it because we are paying for all those extra from the extra revenue we're getting from new assessment, and that's what's gonna pay for it. So we don't need to scare people, tell them you gotta pay $32. That $32, I'm pretty sure it's gonna come from new assessment. If nobody see it but me, there's something wrong, I don't know. But every year we're getting $2-3 million spent from that new assessment for new employees, for new services that we're getting, like RCMP, 158,000 times 4. We didn't see any increase in general tax rate. So we shouldn't go to the public and tell them we're gonna increase your tax by $32. We're gonna find that tax somewhere from the new assessment coming every year. So if nobody see it but me, I don't know. That's how I see it, so.
All right, I'm going to ask Deputy Warden to take chair, since nobody else is left to speak.
Okay, Madam Warden, take the floor.
And I'm just going to say, there's been a lot of good discussion here this evening, and it's no secret here that when it comes to transit, I have not jumped on the bus yet. But I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves, because all we're discussing here is what to take to the public to give them an idea of what transit would cost. We're not making a decision that we're gonna do transit and this is how we're gonna pay for it. We have not heard from the public yet, and we may be very surprised at what we hear from the public. Maybe it'll be me that's surprised, and maybe the public will be overwhelmingly excited about transit. Maybe it won't be me, maybe it will be some other folks, and maybe the public will be underwhelmingly excited about transit. We don't know yet. But I just think we have to wait until we hear what the public says. Because the majority of the public, and those are the folks that send us here to make those decisions, and maybe the majority of the public in some of the corridor areas will say, no, I don't see a benefit right now. Maybe they'll say, yes, I think it would be a great benefit going forward, but we don't know that yet. So I just want to caution folks and anybody that happens to be listening, this is not a decision we're making about having transit and this is how we're going to fund it. This is a decision that we're making to be able to share the best possible estimates of what it would cost the public if we did have transit, so that we can give those the best numbers we can to the public when we go to the public meetings. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. We're going to pass the chair back to you, and it's time to call for our vote, please.
And the motion is passed by a vote of 10-1, with Councillor Merriam voting nay.
So Madam Warden.
Yes.
So Madam Warden, if I may, given the motion that's just passed, I think Graham would want to see a motion to, about the public consultation, to remove the public consultation plans for the rural areas and Mount Uniac. Keeping in mind, I think it's important that we have one in that sort of upper 9 Mile Hardwood Lands area. So I think maybe one rural consultation instead of the 5. And keeping in mind that we also have a virtual presentation planned, a virtual meeting for those who have accessibility issues, so they can join in the conversation. So a motion to remove the rural consultation points from council's previous direction would be in order for Graham to move on with the consultants.
Okay, Counselor Rhino.
Well, I know the motion passed, and I understand that. Throw a wrench into it. The public comes back, and, you know, in those areas and says, nope, we don't like it. And council then has to decide what they're gonna do, and they just say, let's happen. There was a reversal. We never went to the rural area because that wasn't the option we were thinking of. If we change our, if we change our minds, we're gonna have to do it at that point. I think hopefully that, not just the rural, but it would have to go to Mount Uniacke at that time too, right? So I'm just wanna make people aware of this, right? So, as long as everybody's good with it.
This is just the meetings that we're holding. There's nothing to prevent rural, like, we'll promote the survey in all of East Hants. Like, it will be promoted. There's no restriction. One of the questions will be like, where do you live? So then we'll be able to get the information based on areas.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you.
Counselor Garden Cole.
Okay, so just some clarification on that. So you're going to be sending the survey into all the areas, including the rural areas?
Or did we remove that?
Ryan?
Through you, Madam Chair, Adam and I were just, so that would be the clarification we'd be looking for essentially is, do you want the survey and the mail out to go out to the entire, all of the addresses in the municipality, or do you want to keep it to the smaller area? You've sort of, we're at the point where you're talking about, do you want the engagements just to be in those sort of within the corridor and maybe sort of slightly outside of it?
In the affected areas.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean, the survey will always be live, we'll be promoting it, but the mail out obviously has costs, every address costs, so
Well,
what would council's wish be there?
I mean, I'm not, yes, cost as well, but I'm just thinking of who it applies to, who's paying for it, and who's making responses based on the fact that they'd be paying for it. And
In that case, I think you would not, I was thinking more just the sessions, but I think the motion would be more around the consultation be done in the urban areas,
with the potential for the urban areas, including the,
including
the
the,
PS.
anyone that has that PSR, within that PSR area, I think you want to consult with, but we can do that instead of going cards out to everybody, 11,000 homes, we can,
Right, okay, and also when they're coming in through, if they're online and coming in, I know last time we had surveys and we're understandably weren't able to break it down to areas, but when we're coming back with surveys that have been completed online, we want to know which ones, where they came from in relation to whether it was people who were actually paying for it or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So through you, Madam Chair, yes, the survey will identify the communities from which the respondents are indicating they are from, and therefore we would be able to aggregate the data and the responses based on
Great,
those.
thank you.
Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Warden. So if you send the survey to Mount Uniacke, and are you gonna say that it's only gonna be serviced in the corridor area?
I think what they're looking for is a motion to just do the consultation in the area being serviced and charged. That's the motion they're looking for.
Yes, so I would like to see something that wouldn't leave Mount Uniacke out and tell them, like, in the future when we feel that Mount Uniacke can support something like that, like, because I don't know how can somebody really, you send in a survey for some, yeah, oh well.
I think we could probably do that as a, like, phase 2 of transit, to go out and survey Mount Uniacke to see if there's interest in paying for a service in Mount Uniacke.
Yeah, like, I would like to see something like, that's not left out, because it's a possibility that we're gonna need it in the next few years. But I don't know how to approach it, but it's very hard to send a survey.
So through you, Madam Chair, the survey that council's received actually does have a component that deals with those future routes.
Okay.
So again, if it was something that council wanted, we could certainly still go out to the whole municipality with the survey. I mean, anybody can fill out an online survey. They don't actually need the card to come in the mail. The card is just to promote people to actually go out and fill the survey. So it's the question that we'd be looking for direction on is, do you want us to send the mail out to the entire municipality? Do you want us to try and target it to just the impacted areas? What would you like that geographic boundary really for the mail out to be? And then certainly, when results come in from the survey, we could certainly sort of play with the data and show what the different areas indicated.
Can I continue, Madam Warden? I think it's better to send it to the affected area and stay with that, like, thank you.
Counselor Perry.
Well, I'm just gonna make the motion that we send this out to the area that has been identified via the questionnaire, via the pay structure, that they're the ones who receive the mail out. The rest of the mail outs do not have to go to the whole municipality, and that all public engagement meetings be held in the corridor and 9 Mile River, which will encompass all of the affected areas of the questionnaire for transit.
Second that.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you, Graham.
All right, Graham.
I just wanted to take a quick moment and thank Wade and Jordan's team, the finance team, because, and Kim, a lot of this report dealt with that, and there was a lot of work that went into those numbers, so just thank you from me.
Counselor Perry.
I was just waiting to make the next motion to go in camera.
Okay. Just before we do that, Counselor Rhino. Whoops, sorry, I accidentally hit the wrong button. Go ahead.
Well, since we're in a thanking mood, I'm gonna thank staff for listening to the rural counselors. Thank you.
All right. Counselor. Okay, the next items on the agenda,
Let's do the land issue first in camera.
are in-camera issues, and I guess Amy has to stay anyway, so there's no benefit in jumping ahead and going back, so. So I would be looking for a motion to go in camera to discuss land issues as well as a continuation of the CAO priorities. Moved by Counselor Perry, seconded by Counselor McPhee. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary, motion is carried. We'll give staff time to Okay, I would report that we met in camera to discuss some land issues and the continuance of the CAO priorities report. Coming out of those discussions, we do have one motion coming forward. Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair to the CAO, can I make all this as one motion?
And I do not have the deputy warden
I have it.
here, so I'm gonna,
Read it out? Okay, I'm gonna move that council authorize the CAO to enter an easement agreements for all eligible driveways, crossings, and access points along the DAR corridor identified on the 2025 survey sketches completed by William Nutter Limited, or as otherwise demonstrated to have existed at such time, provided they do not pose safety, operational, or liability concerns, with all costs associated with said agreements borne by the municipality, and move that council authorize that the CAO enter into encroachment agreements for all eligible legacy encroachments in accordance with the DAR Corridor Legacy Encroachments Policy Bylaw A300, with all costs associated with the said agreements borne by the municipality, and move that council direct the CAO to return to council for approval of any proposed encroachments or easements along the DAR corridor that is not eligible under the DAR Corridor Legacy Encroachments Policy or was not identified on the 2025 survey sketches or otherwise demonstrated to have existed in such time, and move that council direct the CAO to return to council for consideration of any proposed conveyance of municipal lands arising from the implementation of the DAR Corridor Legacy Encroachments Policy, and move that council direct the CAO to return to council for all consideration of any proposed enforcement actions arising from the implementation of the DAR Corridor Legacy Encroachments Policy, and move that council direct the CAO to return to council for consideration of any proposed order to remove actions arising from the implementation of the DAR Corridor Legacy Encroachments Policy.
moved and seconded. I'm going to ask the deputy warden to take the chair for a moment.
Madam Warden, go ahead.
Just want to speak to say that I will not be supporting this motion. The majority of the motion I'm absolutely fine with. I just do not feel that the process for allowing licensed encroachments to pass with the property is strong enough. I would have preferred a stronger ability for those to flow with the property than what is provided. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I'll pass the chair back to you.
And we'll go to the vote.
Guess we're gonna cancel.
And the motion has passed by a vote of 10-1 with myself voting nay. All right, it is getting late.
Need the next one. It's the policy that you just passed.
Okay, so that didn't deal with this, the DAR Corridor Legacy Encroachments Policy? Okay, Amy.
So through the chair, we do need to pass policy in public, and we have to meet the 7-day notice period. So we have to have this conversation today so you can make your second motion next Wednesday. So very quickly, through the chair, when passing bylaw A300, encroachment on municipal property, council had questions on how the encroachments on the DR line would interact with the bylaw. That led to drafting the proposed policy that you see on your document here today, on your agenda here today. The report outlines kind of the key pieces of each section, and it's attached for your consideration. I'd just like to highlight that it really shows the municipality's intent to work with property owners to formalize legacy encroachments, and outlines the criteria to be an eligible encroachment, and really works to strike a balance between protecting municipal interests and acknowledging historical uses of the DAR line. This policy has been reviewed by legal, and it's structured to complement the bylaw that you passed earlier this year. And so with that, we've got two motions on the screen. The first one being to give notice of intent to adopt the policy at today's meeting ahead of approval next week on Wednesday. Thank you.
Councillor Garden Cole.
I'm just gonna go ahead and make the motion. Move that council gives notice of intent to adopt the DAR corridor legacy encroachments policy as presented and attached to the July 23rd, 2026 regular meeting of council, policy and in-camera agenda.
Moved and seconded. I won't bother making discussion on this one. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Someone has not voted. And the motion is passed by a vote of 10-1, with myself voting nay.
Move that the Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends the council adopt the DAR corridor legacy encroachments policy as presented and attached to the July 23rd, 2026 regular meeting of council.
This is for the 29th.
That's next week.
Oh, okay.
This is
Okay.
not for tonight.
Surely you could have stopped me sooner than that.
She just wants to stay.
All right, anything further on that one, Amy? All right, so next is the municipal fee policy.
So through the chair, quickly again here, the proposed update to the municipal fee policy, it's really a housekeeping item that's going to allow us to implement bylaw A300, which we've talked about earlier as well. When passing the bylaw, we talked about in the report that the encroachment fees would be established in this policy, so that's what we're doing today. Before I go any further, I do want to provide clarification for you guys, though, that given the policy that you just passed, this discussion applies to encroachments on all municipal properties. It would exclude encroachments on the DAR line, as council's opted not to implement fees for DAR encroachments, which you're permitted to do under the bylaws. We're talking generally anything new moving forward, not DAR conversations. Very simple structure. You've seen this actually in a previous staff report. No application fee to apply for an encroachment license, a $300 admin fee, HST included, at the time of entering into an encroachment license. The intent here is not full cost recovery by any means. It's really to offset the direct transaction costs that we see with land registration fees and courier fees and the like. The report does contain some additional alternative models, but really the recommendation here is really staff's opinion. The best proposed approach, simplest, most practical for implementation, especially as we're in the early stages of managing encroachments as a municipality in a formal way. So again, motions on the screen, same structure as what you just passed. Thank you.
You're still on, Councillor Garden Cole?
Move that council give notice of intent to add encroachment fees to the municipal fee policy as attached to the regular meeting of council, policy and in-camera agenda dated July 23rd, 2026.
Seconded by 3 people. Seconded by Councillor Hebb. Any discussion on the motion? We'll go to the vote.
Council Ryan's not here.
Yes, and Councillor Rhino had to leave the meeting, so the motion is passed unanimously by those present. Well, this is it.
Motion to adjourn is the next one.
No, we don't need a motion for that. Well, that concludes the business on the agenda tonight. We're slightly less than an hour late, but we don't, this is Thursday night. We don't have a Thursday night to do. So I do appreciate folks staying late and getting the business done, and staff as well. So thank you all. And with that, I declare the meeting